Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Will You Give Me a Reading? My name is Jenna Matlin. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the episode, whether you're live or you're coming in later. I have a wonderful guest to introduce to y'all. It's Rue Lee Story. Is that correct?
Hello. Yep.
Sarah?
Yep. Yep.
Yay!
Yep. You got it.
And Ruli created your tarot toolkit, which is coming out. Is it about a week, right? We've got.
Technically speaking, it's about a week. I've heard that pre-orders have started going out already, so that's the thing. But technically speaking, the launch date is the 8th.
I saw on Amazon. I looked it up, and it was said only like 4 books. Order now. There's only 4 books left. Like Amazon is doing this new thing where it's like more of an on-demand system, buying books. So tell your friends, like get your buy it now because there may be a delay in the beginning.
That's good to know.
Too. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm really
excited
for
having me.
So tell me a little bit, tell everyone a little bit about you. I know you're in Atlanta, right? You're not super far from me. I'm in North Carolina. So
right.
Tell us a little bit about you. What do you got going on? What's happening? Tell me about the if you remember, the idea of this book.
It came to me in a fever dream. Yeah, so I am a non-binary and disabled author and witch and tarot reader. I have been doing tarot for about 5 years now, question mark. Time is fake. It's hard to remember exactly when. I know that around when, but about 5 years. And this is probably going to sound very familiar to you working with young tarot readers and the like, but I initially was just something I was doing for myself, and then it started kind of ballooning out into people asking me for readings and me having more of a strong sense of, I actually kind of know what I'm doing, maybe possibly. And that was kind of the point at which I started coming up with the vague idea for the book, because I sort of ran into this wall with looking for guides and reference books and that kind of thing for tarot, where it was like, I can either find books that are very basic beginner, like here's what all the cards mean, which is great, and I definitely used my fair share of those and still do. Or you have books that are kind of like, here's a bunch of spreads, or very specific to a theme or something like that. And I was like, I want some way to kind of crystallize, if I'm drawing a card for myself, cool, I know vaguely what it means in the abstract, but I don't know how to apply that to my day-to-day, which is kind of what I was looking for. And so that's where the idea for the book came from, was, okay, I want, at any given day, if I do a daily draw, which is something that a lot of people, I love your mug. Sorry, total sidebar, I just noticed that. Sorry. A lot of, especially new tarot readers, they'll say, start drawing a card for yourself every day and noticing, what themes jump out, what cards seem to be chasing you, like that sort of thing, which I had been doing. And I'd gotten to this point of, cool, well, I pulled this card again. I know generally, cool, the star, hope, beauty, blah, 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 blah. Now what with that? So coming up with a list of kind of ready-made, here's affirmations you can do based on the card, here's reflection questions you can think about or write about or whatever based on the card. That was kind of where it started. Initially just for me again, and then I was like, oh, actually I might be able to do something with this other than just use it myself.
Yeah, I might be on to something.
Yeah,
so
maybe.
Do you have it back? This is your first traditionally published book, right?
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, Jamie. Oh, hey, QEW. Hey, guys. So this is your first book ever, or did you wrote in any genres or anything like that?
Well, it's my first published book ever. I have a short story published that I got published when I was 14, so that feels like it was a different lifetime, kind of. And hi, everyone. I have several other books at any given time that I'm working on, both fiction and tarot related, but this is the first one that has actually made it out into the world, which is very exciting and strange.
I don't know, about your, how your writing process was, but for me in my book, I felt like resistance was like just a piano sitting on me a lot of the time. And I
Yeah.
would constantly fight against it, and it was incredibly difficult. So I guess like to ask you, because I know that you claim that claim, but you say that's how you present yourself, like I have a disability, right? And
Hmm.
we're talking from a place of spoons.
Yep.
How did you do that? Like, and still honor your spoon level. You know what I mean?
It is definitely an ongoing process. It's, in case anybody doesn't know, spoon theory is kind of an internet thing that started around disability to uh, be an analogy for having not as much energy as the average person. So in the disability community, a lot of times you'll hear, "Oh, I don't have enough spoons for that," or "I'm saving my spoons for such and such." It just means like, I know I'm not going to have enough energy to do all 12 of these things, so I need to pick two. Um, and it's definitely a process. Um, I think that especially because writing you think of as like, oh, I'm sitting and I'm just typing. It shouldn't take that much energy. And then you start doing it and you go, oh, no, never mind. Actually, this is quite hard. Um, it was kind of, and it still is kind of a process of uh, pacing myself in a very mindful way and saying, okay, I'm going to write a page or I'm going to finish this little section that I was working on. And the nice thing about this particular book, too, is that it is so segmented into each card, and each card has mini sections, so that it was kind of easier to do that in a way because I could go, okay, I'm just writing the activity write up for this one card, and then I'm going to step away for a while and see how I feel. And if I'm cool, then I can come back and do some more. But it kind of lent itself to pacing a little bit better than like some of the fiction stuff that I do where I go, oh no, I've been writing for 2 hours and I need to get up or I'm going to die.
Right, right, exactly. Well, I just want to say, like, oh, Jamie says she says thank you for writing it. I don't know if you see the
Oh,
comment.
thank you so much. I just looked. Thank you so much, Jamie. That's incredibly kind.
I gotta say, going through it, like Llewellyn did right by you in this book. Like, I mean, I personally love the way they kind of like put it all together.
Yeah, it's
Spacing, it's very well done. The
yeah.
graphic design of the book, it really easy to just open a page, even if you don't
Hmm.
have it back, and you're like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and it feels so approachable.
That's really the hope.
It really is, and I love that you don't need to know. This is a self care book that happens to use tarot.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you can buy a deck and not know how to use it at all, right? But
Hmm.
you can still totally access not only the energy of each card, but like a self care guide in all of that. I think is amazing.
That's definitely the hope. And again, I had to, or I didn't have to, but I wanted to keep in mind this whole thing. I've had books that will be like, here's a spell that you can do for a tarot card, which is cool. But again, if I'm having a low spoon day, I'm like, I'm not going to pull out all my herbs and all my candles and all the things. I just
Right.
want like a quick, easy thing to make it feel like I've incorporated the card into my day. And
Mhm.
so that's one of the things that I really tried to do was, okay, even if it's just I can say this affirmation to myself when I'm getting ready in the morning, and that's plenty, and that's a tiny spell of its own accord. Um, yeah, the goal was very much to be as accessible and approachable as possible because I've definitely encountered witchy and tarot books where I feel like I don't feel capable of doing this because I
Eyes
don't have enough energy. Yeah,
are like,
exactly.
"Yeah, maybe on vacation I can." Yeah,
Right,
totally.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You know what else I loved? Like, one of the things I always do is I look at like your cited works, your recommended readings. That tells me a lot about like what are some of the foundational pieces that helped you
I
write the
did the
book?
same thing with yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did.
I have a lot. It's ridiculous. I loved, for example, where is it? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? And I loved that the further readings you had it broken out by element, which I thought was super
Yeah.
cool. And I was like, why didn't I think of that?
That's also kind of a legacy from the original version of the book because there was a quote for each card. And we had to cut those both because time and because not time, length, that's the word, and just permissions basically. But I was like, I want to keep some element of, hey, this whole book kind of fits in the Cups vibe, so go read this even though I can't quote it. So that was a little bit where that came from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really love, like, for example, that you have Tara Brock in there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love Radical Acceptance.
It's
Super love that. Super. I was like, all right, we're gonna get along.
that's one of
And
those
I was
books that I think
like,
everyone should read.
and the Poetry Remedy, I was like, oh my gosh. And like that, of course, Brene Brown is like Under Swords, and I was
Right.
like, of course, Elizabeth Gilbert is Under Wands, like so perfect. Like this makes me feel like we need to have like an expanded Google Doc of like by element, like
Yeah.
what vibe are you looking for right now?
Yeah, like a tarot themed reading list.
Yeah, exactly.
Would
I
anyone use that besides us?
I also saw like in your, so I want to talk a little bit about you and you in connection to this. And two things struck me about you talking about losing your father, and that's what brought you to tarot, right?
Yeah.
That kind of saw you through. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how that's informed like your approach as a reader? Because you're a pro reader as well, right?
Somewhat on and off, depending on body, energy, and
Yeah.
people and all the
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
exactly.
Um, yes. So I lost my dad in 2017. It was not sudden or unexpected. It was a thing that had been building for eh, like 10 years, probably on and off. Not like at a horrific level for 10 years, but we had known it was coming for a long time. And I have a very close, tight knit family, so it was devastating. Um, and I wasn't raised especially religiously in any my joke is that I'm the kid of a lapsed Lutheran and a lapsed Jew, so like there was not any particular
Right,
spirituality. It was like whatever
right,
you
right.
feel, or don't, that's fine. We did go to a Unitarian Universalist church for a while, which I've now found my way back to as an adult, which is great.
Mhm, mhm.
Because that's just basically spiritual but not religious, the church. Um, but I hadn't really landed on any sort of spiritual practice that felt right. And I, at the same time, didn't feel like I needed one at that point. And then I lost my dad, and I was like, oh no, I actually do need one, it turns out. So it was a little bit of throwing a lot of different things at the wall. And initially, the first deck that I picked up, I think I actually came to tarot, now that I'm thinking about this, from reading a fiction book that included tarot as a main, like,
Oh, cool.
MacGuffin kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, oh, this seems interesting and like a cool storytellery way to kind of be mindful or think about your day or whatever. So I wasn't thinking about it in terms of spirituality then. I was just thinking this is a tool, basically, not to continue to harp on the toolkit thing. That's one of my favorite metaphors, even before I wrote this book, to be clear. Um, and it kind of became spiritual as it went, but that's another thing that I talk about a lot in the book. Like you said, it's a self-care book that happens to be about tarot, is that I would love to see it become a little bit less like just witchy, even though it very much is and can be witchy. It can also just be, here's a bunch of things that are things that humans experience, and you just pull one out and you think about how it applies to your day and you go on. And it doesn't have to be any like the deities have given this to me or the ancestors or whatever. It can, and for me, it definitely is sometimes. But yeah, that was that may have been more information than you were looking for.
No, no, no. I love it. I think I think that like is prevalent throughout your book about you're giving people suggestions, and
Hmm.
but it's up to them to decide how they want to knit together their faith or their own relationship to themselves.
Yeah.
And that dovetails into kind of the second thing about you that I was like, oh, that's interesting that in the book you say that you're wanting to become a UU chaplain, right? Like
Hmm.
that is the goal for you,
Yeah.
right? Which is so Unitarian Universalist, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, um, I'm not an official member, but I do go. Like I have this thing. My husband and I, like, we go if we're out of town, I'll be like,
Mhm.
let's go to UU here, you know, like let's see what's popping, and it's a lot of fun, you know. But
Mhm.
that's the same approach, which is many paths, right?
Yep. Yep.
Get us to, as long as we are approaching it in our own truth, you know, and
Mhm.
does it really matter the path, right?
Yeah. And being respectful of everybody else in this
Right,
room who
and their
has,
paths are also
every person has a very different path than you do, and they're all valid and fine as long as you're not hurting anyone. And that's the thing about chaplaincy, especially, is that you kind of have to be at least a little bit. Uh, I don't know if egalitarian is the word that I want, but kind of that. You have to be very able to work with whatever person you're working with and what their faith is. And I feel like UUs are kind of uniquely qualified to do that because that's kind of the whole situation. Gesundheit? Question mark?
I
You can tell it was so quiet.
was trying to like slide that under the radar. I was like,
Sorry. And then I just called you out.
and I'm like, oh yes, it was. Yeah, I think that that's true, and also like UU chaplains are so much about care, right?
Yeah,
Care of the soul,
exactly.
care of the person,
Yep.
and consent in that. And that, like, to be a U chaplain is so different than I think some other faith based situations, which feel
That shall remain nameless.
power, like
Hmm.
there's definitely like a power differential, right?
Yeah, for
Whereas
sure.
EU is just like this helpful friend,
Yeah,
who might be able to guide you to a few things, right?
sure.
So I was wondering, like,
Mhm.
where did you start? Like, what was the first card? Did you start from full on, or did you
Yeah, I
kind
did.
of? Oh, you really did?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I am an overachiever. I definitely dove right in. Um, I don't know if I remember what my first card was. I know I at the very beginning pulled Eight of Pentacles a lot, which is fun. I swear my decks have a sense of humor. Um, but I know the first deck that I had was the Wild Unknown, just because I was like, ooh, rainbows and animals.
Mm, mm, mm. Was there a card in the book that you were struggling with or struggled to frame in a
Mm,
self care kind of approach?
that's a good question.
Oh man, I don't mean to put you on the
No,
spot.
you're good. I'm thinking back because it's been a little while now since I've been working on it. I want to say the fives in general.
Yeah.
Like weirdly, the tower I immediately knew was going to be about like how do you deal with a crisis, and that clicked pretty quickly for me. But some of the fives are just so like here you are in the thick of it. Um, that I think if memory serves, I had a little bit of a harder time with them. And in general, I have not I don't pull swords or pentacles as much as cups and wands.
Oh, interesting.
Um, I'm pulling pentacles a little bit more this year, I think, because I've been working with Hestia, so that tracks.
Ah,
But I think especially the like early pentacle, like Three of Pentacles. I know even now sometimes I'll pull it and go, okay, wait, what are you again? Hang on, because I almost never pull it.
it's like famous last words. As soon as you say that, that's when it
Oh,
happens.
for sure, 100%. Yeah.
A lot of tarots like, oh really?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So as you were doing like the book, like, did you find that the cards that you were working on, like, were being reflected in your life as you were living it, as you were going through the deck?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a solid example of that, but I do feel like that happened a number of times. I know this must have been while I was writing it. The funniest one was I'd been going back and forth for months about whether or not to buy a walker because I was like, I don't know, I don't really need it. It just would be nice if I'm like standing for long periods of time in these very specific circumstances, but I don't know. Meh, meh. And I pulled a card and it was in my deck, one of my decks that is super, super like many different ability levels, many different races and genders and everything. I literally pulled the one card that had a walker in it. And I was like, okay, I got it. Message received. So that was, I don't know if that was the card that I was working on at the moment with the book, but I was writing the book, and that just sort of inserted itself. It's like, okay, self-care, I understand. Thank you, universe. We got it.
Yeah. Something like that happened to me recently too, where I was like, okay, yeah, I know. Like, like,
Sometimes all you can do is just be like, yes, I get it. Thank
you
you.
know, yeah, like you know that you're like a, you're like a reader when like you get towered down. You're like, yeah, all right, like it no longer like fills you with like abject fear
Right.
as it may have at the beginning, where you're just like, yeah, okay, what's new,
Yeah,
right?
tell me something new. Yeah, exactly.
Start talking back to it, right? Right? Like, oh my gosh, right? So,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
I love your little stories, especially with the court cards. Like, and I love that. I'm just looking at Knight of Swords because I always am curious as to how people conceptualize Knight of Swords.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of like, how has this person created relationships with power,
Mm.
or others in power? And I love that you talk about Mulan, that's really cool. And I use Knight of Swords. I say, yeah, she's definitely like, uh, oh my gosh, what's her name? Joan of Arc. Yeah, like a Joan of
Yes.
Arc. So, like, super forceful, but very protective as well,
Hmm.
willing to put themselves in harm's way for the people that they love.
Yeah.
So I love that you also kind of conceptualize Knight of Swords that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd never thought about Mulan and Joan of Arc, but that is I can absolutely see that connection too. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, something I loved about your book was your suggestion to create basically characters for yourself around the court cards, and uh, I kind of went out at the opposite direction of like, here are characters that already exist in the world that a lot of people maybe know this character, but they two halves of the same idea, I think, of just instead of thinking of them as archetypes, trying to make them actual people or characters or someone like fully realized.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to jump because we've only got a few minutes
Yes.
left here. And then, y'all who are here live, we're going to go to Instagram and talk more, just to kind of get both platforms and have fun with it. But I did want to talk about Knight of Wands because,
Yes.
um, and I love how, where'd he go? I have it. So,
Somewhere.
Knight of Wands is really, I loved that you talk about just you talk about Alexander Hamilton, which I thought was great.
I'm a theater kid. What can I say?
Yeah. I was like, and just and how what a perfect like combination for Night of Wands, like
Hmm.
110%, but like a lot,
Yes. Yep.
and um, and that the charisma that comes with it, what people feel in that. And I wanted to talk about, like, so you have each card has, you talk about it. There's the affirmations, like, I am a self starter. So I loved, like, with the Knight of Wands, like, you're giving people the option to either kind of utilize Knight of Wands to, like, light a fire under their butt, maybe, and, like, get them going.
Hmm.
Or, like, maybe you've been too Knight of Wands and you
Right.
need to, like, bring
Hmm.
it down. So I love that you have the affirmations, you have the reflections, and then you have the actions. And then you include, and this is just so brilliant, the effort level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, someone
That
can quickly go, where am I right now? What can
right.
I do?
I love the fact that they added the little dots to, because I
Yeah,
had the level and then they added that and I was like, I that's how I should have done it. Good job.
they did a really good job
They
with
really
that
did.
design. Yeah, I'm looking at it going, man, this is great. So I love that you, like, so for Knight of Wands, like, some of the activities you have is make a burnout plan and schedule a passion day. And so, right, you're getting kind of both sides of
Right.
that card. And I loved this idea of burnout plan because I talk about it in my book as well, burnout.
Hmm.
And then, both of us are intimately familiar with the spoons theory
Yep.
and you're disabled. I was almost disabled. I got very close. Um, and the energy, right, that it takes to read for others,
Yeah.
and that it's few individuals that do it full time for a long time, just because
Yeah.
it's such a big energy suck, isn't it?
Yeah. For sure. For
So,
sure.
yeah, so I was thinking, like, if you were to make a burnout plan, like, what is your burnout plan? Like, and what would you recommend to readers who may also start to feel that? And and I want to add one more thing to it. I think it's so
Yeah.
good that you've done this, because I've seen things in the tarot community that are like, well, I never get tired. Like, I'm doing this magical thing, so I'm never tired. And I'm like, that
I
just,
don't
but I
believe you.
a lot, right? So
Yeah.
just be honest with, like, our vulnerabilities and give them care. So yeah, I don't know if I'll put you on the spot, but like,
No.
what is a burnout plan, and how do you know you need to, like, trigger the plan?
Well, I have there is a different activity in the book. I think I yes, okay. I was like, I think it's 10 of Wands, and I think I said it. I do. Um, that is like a check engine light where you kind of sit down and identify what are the signs that you're overwhelmed or you're burned out for you. Um, and I think it's going to be different for every person. Like, I think the one that I talked about in the book is that if I'm not singing a lot, that's probably a bad sign, because I tend to just things remind me of things and I just start singing. And if I'm not doing that, it's a good sign that I like have no energy to spare on any frills whatsoever.
Got it.
Um,
Got it.
so it's I think for that piece, it's thinking about what not what do you do when you're at like survival level, but what things or behaviors or traits come out more when you are thriving, and then being able to say, oh, okay, that's not around anymore, so maybe we need to take a step back. And I think getting input from loved ones is really helpful with that too, because sometimes they notice when you're not yourself more than you do, because you're
Mhm,
in the thick of it.
mhm.
um, or they'll be able to say like, oh yeah, I can tell you're in a good mood because insert behavior here. um, as far as the plan itself, I think, and this may not be true for everyone, for me it's finding those things that are, they feel like I'm doing something without taking a ton of energy. So I think the example that I used was embroidery or cross stitch for me really helps, because I can be sitting, I am just moving my hand up and down, which for me is manageable, and I can see I'm still making a thing happen, and I can kind of watch it come together. And that, making conscious time to do that is genuinely like both physically and mentally restorative for me, because it doesn't feel the same as I'm just gonna lay on the couch and watch something, which for some people that might be the thing, but for me that feels more like default, I guess, rather than I have decided that I am going to take time to recharge. I
Mhm,
guess it feels less mindful is the way to put that.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, that would be my advice, is to identify a couple of activities that feel like this doesn't just kill time, it actively recharges my brain and my body a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I was doing a lot of reading on burnout at the end of last year, and there was something I caught. Don't don't quote. I don't remember exactly where I read that, but it was just like, we often make the mistake of, like, the things we enjoy, right? Like the things
Mhm.
that feel good, that we hold them as it ransom. Like, is if you do XYZ, that's the reward,
Mm,
rather than those things replenish you. They're the
yeah,
battery pack that then enables you to have the energy you need to complete these other tasks. Like,
yeah,
really looking at it in a different way.
yeah,
Totally. Hmm.
yeah. I have to think about that a lot in terms of hello, and just in terms of resting, like not thinking of resting as, oh, I have failed to do all the things, so now I'm just lying in a puddle. It's like, no, this is actively a thing that my body and brain need in order to. It's maintenance. It's routine maintenance, like for a car that you have to do this in order to keep running properly.
Yeah, and I think too, like our society is so content driven all the time, and
Yeah.
especially Americans, so puritanical in that way, which
Hmm.
is like if you're not constantly doing producing or checking off, then you have less value
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just is so crazy. Because I think about it, like from the 1950s on, there's always this like, and then this new technology comes, and then you'll have more time to rest or do whatever. I'm like, actually, it's like less than ever before. I think we've been,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you've been feeding us a line, actually.
yeah, like, oh. So, yeah, I think that's so important. Like,
Yeah.
and you and I were gonna have another talk right later, but it's like that idea of like having like physical health or mental health challenges
Hmm.
that mean you have less spoons, less energy,
Yep.
and then you beat yourself up for it, or
Yep.
right, you get in that vicious cycle where it's like, oh, I'm having a good day of a couple hours
I was just gonna say, yep, 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 yep,
before this ends, right?
yep,
And then you crash because of
yep.
it, and
It's like, why do I feel terrible for 3 days? I don't know. Maybe because you way overdid it.
you're like, maybe like I don't know, like you were thinking. So I also love how with the queens, like what you've done in all of this is so like subtle. Like you make it. How do I say this? Okay, well let me just start like at the exact example. So what I've noticed doing with the queens is that in the actions you have a piece about being for others or being in service of others in some way, right? Which is totally the Queensian, right?
Right. Yes.
So you're showing like a great mastery of tarot in the actions without necessarily having to call it out.
Mm.
And I think that's really subtle and very cool. But like, yeah, like Queen of Cups, reach out to someone going through tough times, set a boundary. Oh girl, those queen those
Yep.
Queen of Cups, they need it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. All of
Um,
the cups, really, but especially I feel like the queen and the page, and I don't know, maybe all of them except for the king. I don't know. All of them, kind of.
yeah, all of them kind of.
And I say that as one of them.
You are you a Cupsian? Would you call yourself a Cupsian?
Probably, yeah. I think I jump back and forth between cups and wands, but I think I'm a little bit more cups than wands.
Hmm. So Jamie is Hillary says, no boundaries. Why?
I hate those.
Oh my God.
Me at my therapist.
So I wanted to ask you, because you are non-binary,
Mhm.
and what was it? How does it feel for you to approach the court cards, right, which come from a
Mhm.
binary system? Um,
Right.
and even, if you're a witch and you went through, Wicca, I know I did
Yeah.
not use very binary, right?
Yep. Yep.
So how have you brought that aspect of yourself into the way you've approached your book and tarot in general? However you want to answer that. I don't want to get too deep, but like however you want.
This very casual question.
I'm just like,
Um, no, it was a little bit difficult at first because again, I don't want to take away from anyone who feels like the divine feminine and the divine masculine are how they relate to tarot or to witchcraft. That like totally valid if that's how it works for you. But that is very much not how it works for me. So I'm going to plug one of my favorite decks now. I started using a deck called the Numinous Tarot that is completely gender neutral, and that made a big difference. Even now, when I go back and work with, because I have a whole bunch of decks that I work with now, but knowing that in my head, like, okay, this doesn't have to be like a masculine energy or a feminine energy. It's like what those have been associated as over all of human history, or specifically all of Western history, really, if we're being honest. Um, yeah, it's definitely a process, and I don't necessarily have a straightforward answer, but like in the book, I use the names of the cards so that we all know what we're talking about and we're all on the same page, but I use they them pronouns for all of them because any person, and this is regardless of how you identify with it, you can pull any of those cards at any point, right? And be like, okay, well, I feel very masculine, but I've pulled Queen of
Mm,
Swords today.
mm,
So just recognizing, I guess, thinking of it more in terms of an energy as opposed to a body part or a gender role or whatever. It's just,
mhm,
this is a more nurturing kind of caring energy versus a more protective, structured energy, I guess.
mhm,
Um, and
mhm.
that's kind of built out into witchy stuff as well, like having a much more non-binary understanding of a lot of deities that are seen as very one or the other, but recognizing like this is just a, to me at least, this is a personality that they are wearing in order to interact with humans. So they don't care if you're saying them as male or female or non-binary or whatever. They're just here.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great way of putting it. I mean, like in my book, I do in one of my court card chapters, I talk about um, looking at like court cards over time and do I did like these word clouds of
Yeah, I loved those. I
yeah,
loved those.
thank you. Oh, I should send you. I did word clouds for all of them. I'll send you a
Ooh, I
yeah.
would love to see.
But just like watching like the patriarchy and all of it, I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
so we need to know whether she's had kids or not, but we're not looking at his fatherhood
Right.
or it's all through the lens of his occupation, but not hers.
Right.
Or if you are the Queen of Swords, then you're probably sad. You know, it's like
Yeah. It's
like what? Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So it's just so fascinating um, to see how these court cards, like out of any cards in tarot, are really a reflection of the moment in time in terms of
Yeah.
the modern society. I just find
Yep.
it immensely fascinating.
I do too. This is why I don't use the actual Rider-Waite deck very much, if at all, because it just, I'm like, this is not, I don't see myself in these cards even once. So, meh. So I mostly use more modern decks that have more uh, diversity of everything in mind because that's where we are now, thankfully.
Hillary says sometimes Dee Dee kind of laughs at it, like that's cute. That's who you think you are.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
I'm like my Dee Dee is like maybe a mushroom, so like
Gender question mark?
it doesn't even know if it's an animal or a fungi. Like it is what it's its own thing.
That's cool.
So
I sorry, I was just gonna say Hestia because she was the first and the last of the Olympians because there's a whole thing of she was the firstborn, but then she was eaten first and out last when Zeus rescued all of them. I'm like, that's a non-binariness of
mm,
sorts. It's not gender specific, but it is a being multiple things that are seen as one or the other at once. So that's a microcosm of how I tend to like look at any sort of witchy thing and go, okay, how do I fit in this?
right, totally. That's so interesting. Ah, yeah, yeah. I love tracing the history of gods through time
Yeah.
and seeing how they shift and change. But anyways, we got to go. And
Yes.
so if you guys want to come hang, for those of you that are here on YouTube, um, how can they find you, Ruby?
I am at both at Ruli Story on Instagram and also Tiny Witchcraft on Instagram, which is my blog that is disability witchcraft specific. But I also do a ton of tarot spreads and stuff there because that's always going to be my roots. Um, and yeah, you can go to rulistory.com and there's links for the book and the blog and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and you recommend a lot of resources for people
I
learning
do.
tarot too. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
that's great. I should, man, just give me, I'm getting so many great ideas.
Likewise.
So let's head on over. And if you guys want to come join us on Instagram, we'll continue this conversation. If not, have a great Imbolc for today if you celebrate. And I'm going to be uploading something really, really cool on YouTube soon around the tower through the lens of basically feminist freedom. And
Ooh.
I have found Proto-Indo-European phonemes like mythological, like it is old, and I am about to blow people's mind around tower. I am so excited. So everyone who's here on YouTube, keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, Ruli and I, we're going to go over to Instagram, and the party's going to continue. So
Yeah.
have a good day, everybody. Thanks so
Thank you all
much.
so much.
Bye.